Okay, hopefully everyone's back now. Welcome back. I see 85 people in the room. This was a very lovely way to start the day here, or in the middle of the day for some people. But now we're going to move on to how to give a good talk. And this will be by Jelena Grujic. She's a physicist working on game theory, complex networks, and complex systems in general. Science communication is a big passion of hers. She's worked in science festival exhibitions in Belgrade and Brussels, participated in things like FameLab, organized public events like DataBeers Brussels, and briefly even worked for the science department of a national Serbian TV station. She's given many talks, helped many people improve their speaking skills, and hopefully she's going to help some of us today. Jelena, the floor is yours.
Thank you, guys. Okay, so thank you all for this lovely invitation and also this the lovely words you used to announce my talk. Let's start first with the poll. So Sophia, if you could share the first polls. I hope by now you guys know how it works. Because I saw that during Massimo's time there was a problem. So the first question is how confident you are about your presentation skills. So options, I'm good. Then the one, not bad, but could be better. Number 3, I manage, but I could improve a lot. And finally, not confident at all. So I'm going to give you 3 seconds. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so let's see the results. So what do I see here? A lot of people, most people are not bad, but they could be better. Then the next option is I manage, but I could improve a lot. And we have 14% of people who are totally good and still came to my talk. So I really appreciate that. And some people are not confident at all. So let's say the second pool. So what percentage of talks do you consider good in a typical conference you attend? A good talk would be something like, let's say you go to the session and your colleague went to another session, and after that you met on a coffee break and the colleague asks you, how was your session? And you say, actually, it was good. There was this talk and they said this about this and concluded that. So you can kind of a talk you would tell your colleagues at the coffee break and would be able to say what was this talk about. So most of them, about half, maybe 20%. And the last one, if I enjoy 10%, I consider that a good conference. So 3 seconds, 1, 2, 3, go. So maybe 20%. So is the most common answer. So 50% of you enjoys 20% or less. So 83% of you enjoys 83% of, so 83% of you enjoys less than 20% of talks they go to. Very small number of you will enjoy certain amounts, so it's like 50% or more. Yet 50% of you are quite happy with how your presentation skills. So just think about that, okay? There is some discrepancy in these results. So I'm going to stand up now, so I'm not going to be able to hear you anymore. So Sophia, wave if you can't hear me very well. It's good. Okay. So let's start this. So I want to start everything with the story of the Columbus egg. So what's the story of Columbus egg? So after Christopher Columbus discovered Americas, he was on one of the ships and all the people were saying like, you know, you were discovering Americas, that was not such a big deal, you know, like sooner or later somebody would stumble up there, you know, it's not so special, like any of us could do it. So Columbus, the legend says, gave them an egg and said that, okay, can you balance this egg on one top? And everybody in the room tried and everybody failed. So finally what Columbus did, he broke it a little bit on one side and he made it balance. And you can see this in the picture presented here. And then everybody said, but I could do that. And he said, yeah, you could, but you didn't, you know? So once I showed you how to do it, now it's easy. So we're going to leave the discussion about was Columbus such a good guy on the side here, but just focus on the moral of this story. And this talk is going to be a bit about like, you know, showing you how to break the egg. Everything most of the things I'm going to tell you are not going to be the big news to you. It sounds like common sense. However, telling you will help you be a better speaker. You know, somehow putting all this thing will help you improve your skills. So that's a disclaimer. So why would you give a good lecture? Let's start with that. First, I really consider not giving good lecture to be rude. You know, there are, you know, in this case, there are like 80 people who came to talk to me. Me giving you something you can't understand at all is wasting everybody's time, you know? None of us want to do that. So if you're given an opportunity to give a talk, is it at a conference, is it in your group, don't waste people's time. Invest your time and try to make something people will understand and will learn something from it. Second thing is that a lot of people have this conception that, you know, if nobody understands them, that's because what they do is so difficult and they're so smart for doing it. So, you know, like, of course, people can't understand what they do. And this is nonsense. This is total nonsense, okay? If you know very well what are you doing, then you know how to explain it. The best science communicator at the same time were also the biggest scientists, you know. Richard Feynman, we already heard about from Massimo. Stephen Hawking, you all know. Carl Sagan. These people are also very good scientists. And if you think that Carl Sagan is not good scientist, look up something called Sagan effect. So you will figure out that, yes, he was actually a good scientist also. So if you know what you do, you can explain it. And Richard Feynman famously said that if you can't explain something to the first year student, then you haven't really understood it. And what is normally asked from you is even less challenging. You know, like when you go to the conference, you need to be able to explain what you do to your peers who don't do what you do, but are still have quite a good backgrounds. And if you can't explain this to your peers, then you should you should really think about if you really understand what you're doing. And finally, a lot of people make a mistake when they're giving a talk. They try to kind of tell people everything they do, you know, everything. And that's wrong. The point of your talk, especially conference talk, is not to explain everything you did. It's to generate interest. So your talk is advertisement for your paper. And what you need to do is convince people to pick up your paper and read it. So think about that when you prepare your presentation. Okay, so chat. Let's use the chat a little bit. Each presentation has 3 aspects. First one, content. Second one, body language. And finally, voice. Can you open a chat and tell me what do you think is the most important? Sophia,
yes,
can
so
you tell me
yes,
what are the results?
They are saying voice,
So I don't have
body
to go
language. Oh, you are not listening. Okay, so they are saying voice, body language, content, all 3. So they are, yeah, all of them.
All of them. Okay. So people think like, yeah, all of them are important equally, more or less. Is that the
Yeah,
the
so the first
impression?
one were saying more voice, but then as the replies came, they converged to all of them.
To all of them. Okay. Okay, that's not bad. However, what people say that actually the body language is the far most important thing. And that's one of the reasons why I'm standing. And also, I hope you're watching me in the mode where you can see me on the big screen. So if you're not doing that, if I'm small one, please play with your settings and make sure you're seeing big me, because I'm going to gesticulate a lot. So it would be a pity if you don't see that. So first, yes, 60% of your presentation is actually body language. So the way you stand, the way you walk, the way you hold your hand, and this is 60% of your presentation. 30% is voice, and only 10% is content. So what does this mean? Nobody cares what you're talking about? Not really, okay? This is definitely not what I'm trying to tell you. However, if you don't nail body language and if you don't nail voice, nobody will know what you're talking about, okay? Nobody will come to this point of this 10% of content you want them to listen. So, of course, content is very important, and you should make sure that you are work on it. However, you first need to nail the other two, okay? Without being the other two being absolutely perfect, your content will never come to be noticed. Once upon a time, I saw this video, and they were saying that they did a kind of experiment when they showed the talks to people, and then they would show them shorter and shorter, and in each instance, they would ask them what did they think. And they noticed that their opinion in first 3 seconds is the same as if people watch the whole talk. So it seems that your people make up their mind about your talk already in the first 3 seconds. And what they can see in the first 3 seconds? Your body language and your voice. And the content, how much of content is there in 30 seconds? In 3 seconds, none of it. So you really need to work on that. Talent will help. I constantly hear people, I'm not born for this, I'm not good, don't make me do this. Again, nonsense. Talent helps, okay? Definitely, some people are more talented, some people are less talented, but everybody can learn. And I saw this in years I've been giving this talk and working with people. Everybody can learn. And not just that everybody learn, you can see on the right that all the quote like says all the great speakers were bad speakers in first. And this is absolutely true. And I know this about me for sure. And I know it also for a lot of other speakers. Nobody was born being good speaker. Everybody had to learn, everybody had to practice and improve it. So just forget the idea, I can't do this. Everybody can do it. So what is this talk going to be about? So, as you could probably guess, this is not exact science, okay? It's more like art. It's going to be a lot of helpful tricks. A lot of it, as I said, is kind of common sense, but it really helps if somebody tell you, and it makes you pay attention to these things. And everything is going to be split in 3 parts. First part is how to move. So first we are going to work on our body language. Then we're going to talk about how to speak. And finally, how we are going to plan your talk. So let's start. Body language, what not to do. So don't turn your back to the audience. Now when we are doing this in video, it's a bit more difficult for people to do, but hopefully one day we are going to back into all in the same room. So yeah, remember this, never turn your back to the audience, never read your slides, and don't ignore the audience. If you ignore the audience is going to ignore you, full stop. So what should you do instead? Okay, so eye contact, okay? This is very important. You need to maintain eye contact with the audience, but how do you maintain eye contact with, 50 people or 1,000 people? You can't look at the eyes everybody. So what are you going to do? Pick a couple of people in the audience, 3 or 4 is usually good, which sit in different parts of the room. Pick people who are listening to you. And just switch between them. Don't pick a person who is not listening to you. Don't pick your supervisor or anybody whose kind of opinion you're, a bit, let's say, afraid of or you really care about this, because that person is going to make you nervous because you're constantly going to think like, look at them and try to figure out, are you doing a good job or not? So just pick random people who are listening carefully to you and switch between them. When you see these people listening to you, it's going to feed your energy. You're going to feel better about yourself because you're looking at these people who are looking at you. You have to move. but like don't move like a crazy person like this, That's obviously not a good point. Move so it kind of works with your talk. So if you need to, if you're presenting a result, move back. And let's imagine this is my slides. And you can say like, okay, what's going on? Let me present you this result. So on x-axis, we see this, and y-axis is here. And this part, this is what you need to pay attention to, okay? Or good thing is like once you are presenting the key result, you start moving toward the audience, And then you stand in the middle and you say, and this discovery is what brought me my Nobel Prize, okay? So this is how you do. Gesticulate, so use your hands. You can see I use my hands a lot. They say that you should not kind of use your hands like this. And a good trick to train that, which I used a lot, I don't have it anymore, but you take like two pens and you put them under your armpits, and then you move your hands like that. And the pens should not fall. And so you try to gesticulate as much as you can, but without your pencils falling. Talking about that, did you, if at some point everybody will need a piece of paper and pen, so if you don't have one, please start looking for it, because we are going to need that soon. So gesticulation, we are over that. Voice. Okay, so we did body language already. 60% of our talk already done. So let's go to the 30%. How do we work on our voice? How you should talk? You should talk loud and clear, but you should not scream. There is a difference between screaming and being loud. And if you're doing it yourself, you know the difference, because if you're screaming, your voice is hurting. Your voice doesn't like to scream. Screaming is reserved for looking, asking for help when you're in danger. Talking loudly is a very different thing. So talking loudly is using your diaphragm, and it's all about proper breathing, and it's all about using and opening your voice so it's going to be heard. Normally what you need to do, make your voice a bit deeper, because like lower frequencies, so for those of you who are physicists, you probably know that lower frequencies travel further. And if you didn't know that, you probably noticed if the neighbor is having loud music, you usually hear the bass. That's what you hear the most. So if you lower your voice a little bit, it's going to go further. And you should also kind of widen your voice. So this is not something I can teach you in a 5 minutes now. So what I suggest, this is something you have to practice, and it takes some time before you start having the voice which people can hear. You should also talk slowly, but with dynamics. When I was at university, we had this presentation to do, and the person before me was giving presentation, and she was super, very quiet, and she talked very slowly, And I thought, this is terrible. I should never do this, So I'm going to do the total opposite. So what I did, I talked really fast, and I was screaming like crazy. And at the end of it, it was really not better than what she did. And the people in the last rows came to tell me that they feel like I've just been beating them for the last hour. Okay. So don't do that either. You should talk loudly, not scream, and don't talk fast. Okay. Never talk fast. You have to talk slowly. But what makes you not be boring is adding some dynamics in your voice. Third thing, pause. A lot of people just, go from one thing to another. It's actually super effective when you make a pause, especially after you said something important. You stand and you let the audience absorb the information just had. So don't be afraid to pause from time to time. Of course, don't pause all the time after every word. That's not going to work either. Breathing exercises. So normally when I'm doing this live, I make everybody stand up and we do some breathing exercises, but it's not very convenient now. So I'm just going to go briefly through this. the best thing you need to do and to practice this, so Google breathing exercises for public speaking, for actors, for singers. These are all work the same way. And actually, actors, when they study acting and singers, they spend basically 3/4 of their classes on breathing exercises. This is like the most important thing for them. So, pay attention to this. And I can tell you, every night, stand in front of the mirror, do breathing, and I know nobody will do that, okay? But what is kind of more realistic, and you should probably do, when you prepare presentations, so maybe in the days before, try to, every time before you try presentation, try to do these breathing exercises. And this is going to help you just talk in a very much better and more engaging way. They say that Margaret Thatcher took voice coaching. So at the beginning, and there is a video I'm linking at the end of the talk, you can see how she talked at the beginning and how she talked later in her career when she became prime minister. So she actually took voice coaching to make herself speak in a way that people will listen. So if Margaret Thatcher did it, I think you should do it also. How do you do breathing exercises? So just a little bit about that. Don't breathe from your lungs, breathe from your stomach. Use your diaphragm, it's here. And best thing is you just press your finger on the diaphragm, breathe in, and for example, you can say the alphabet. So we have breathe, A, B, C, D, E, and so on. It's a better when we all do it together. So I'm not going to do. And also what should you always try to do is open your mouth, like exaggerate as much as you can while you practice. And then when you do it, it's kind of spontaneously, you're going to talk in a more clear way and people are going to understand you better. Another thing is going to do is tongue twisters. So the rain in Spain stays mainly in the plane. You can do it in the different languages. This is the French one I like to do. This one is, for example, good for French speakers when they practice English. So because the H sound is something. So, based on your nationality, you can find the sound you are having problems with and take that tongue twister and practice what's going on. And when we were talking about being foreigners and not speaking proper English, I often am asked like, oh, but English is not my native language. I'll never be as good as Americans. Americans are actually quite good public speaker. On average, they give better talks than everybody else. But being native English speaker is a small part of it. I think it's more has to do of the culture of giving presentations. Like in American education, they're actually always trained to give public talks. So this more have to do with them being good at it than actually being native speakers. All of us are, most of us here are not native English speakers, and it's fine. We communicate, we have some problems, but at the end of the day, we understand each other. So don't be obsessed about your English. The international language of communication is not English. It's a bad English, actually. However, that doesn't mean it can be just like, okay, I don't care about English. You should improve it. So every day you should try working on improving it. And one way I found it's very good is if you have some native speakers around you, some colleagues or friends, tell them to correct you. And what does it work? If they're correcting you all the time you speak, that's annoying and you're never going to talk to them again. So that's not going to work. However, if they just correct you, if they notice you're repeatedly make the same mistake, so over and over again, then it's they should tell you. And usually not in the middle of your sentence, but on another occasions, like, hey, I noticed you constantly say this. It's actually you're not supposed to say it like this. This is the correct way. If you don't have native speakers, then the speakers of other native languages is also useful because we all have different problems based on what is our native language. So here are some things which people told me. Some of them embarrassingly recently. But for example, explain to me. I used to say explain me all the time. Actually, the proper way to say is explain to me. Information that doesn't have a plural. So it's not informations. It's all, no matter how many they give you, it's always information. The same thing about advice. So it's not advices. People give you advice, full stop. I used to say Chicago, like cheese. And I very recently found out it's Chicago, like in French. It's apparently French name, if you didn't know. I Googled after that. That's what I found out. And then I was saying archaeology, and apparently the proper way to say it is archaeology. So yeah, these are kind of my examples. Find yours and work on them. And once people tell you the first time, you're going to notice all the time, and you're going to correct one by one, and it's going to be fine. Okay, so 90% is over. We are now going to plan our talk. So first thing you need to talk. Identify your audience. You're not giving the same talk to everybody. You know, it's probably very obvious to you that if you're going to give a talk at the kindergarten, you're not going to give the same talk you gave in your group. But you should also pay attention that if you're talking to a group, you should change talk based on the conference. If it's complex system conference, or it's AI conference, or it's economics conference, you should always add something a little bit to adapt it to your audience. And the things you need to know. What do they know? So what kind of things you need to explain? What things you should not, there's no need to explain. What kind of background they have. What they're interested in. So if you go and you talk to biologists, they're not going to be interested in the same things as computer scientists is. So if you have a machine learning model for something in biology, if you go to computer science conference, you're going to focus more on your machine learning model. And if you go to biology, you're going to focus more on the results and what does this model mean and what's happening here. And last thing, you need to talk about what do they believe. So we are all scientists here, and we want to think that we are super objective and no beliefs have nothing to do with what we do, but that's not true. We still have beliefs, and there are things we do in a certain way in one field or another field, and often we don't realize what is absolute truth and what is actually our belief. For, you know, like if, for example, I was giving a talk in game theory once in an economics department. And an economist more or less assumed that game theory is their field. And I knew it's going to kind of be problematic if physicists coming and telling them, look, I did this experiment in game theory, and they're probably not going to be very open to listen to me, and they're going to be, what the physicist knows about this. So in order to kind of approach them better, I added one slide in the talk I'm going to do, and I, you know, came out with everything, and I was like, okay, listen, hey, I'm a physicist. Maybe you don't realize game theory is also done by physicists, but it is. And there is actually a point to doing it. We're doing it differently, okay? So what my understanding is how economists do it, it's this. So you're focusing on this, but we are actually focusing on this. You've been doing these experiments for like 50 years. We've been doing it much shorter. But the reason we're doing it much shorter is because only recently the big data sets we need are being available, you know, and many other things. And I finally concluded with we do simulations because for some reason economists don't do simulations. And there was a lot of simulations in my talk. So I knew that if I just show the simulation, they're going to be, what? Simulations are wrong. You should not do that. And I say, like, we do simulations, deal with it. And with this introduction, I prepare them for what's coming. And they were actually end up being super open. It was one of the best talks I actually gave. It lasted much longer because they were so interested in it, had very interesting conversation afterwards with them. So, you know, don't change your talk to adapt to their beliefs, but prepare them from what's coming. If you think that they have some beliefs which might be problematic and clash, prepare them from what's coming. So that's the first thing, identify your audience. Then you have to identify your topic. So when you're doing, first thing you need to do, think about what did you do, okay? So think about the whole thing and answer the following 3 questions. First, what is the main goal of it? So what is the main idea, the main result coming out of it? Second, why is it important? Why would people care about it? People who are not you, why would they care about your result? Is it going to help human nature in some way? You know, like how it is important. And finally, why is it interesting? You know, what are the aspects from your talk which are interesting? And you have to always emphasize that. And finally, we need to know how much time you have. So keep with your time, never go over your time, which I'm going to do in this talk, so sorry. Don't listen to me. Audience. Okay, so let's talk about the audience. You need to think about them. So you are there for your audience. Audience is not there for you, okay? So you have to think about them every moment of your talk. How they are like. At least I know I'm like that in the audience. Tend to be sleepy, confuse easily, and forget fast. And I'm not saying this in a condescending way, audience is the worst. I'm like this in the audience. I know I am. And, you know, I'm the worst member of the audience. And maybe that's why I care so much about giving good talks, because I really can't handle when people don't give a good talk. But if you think about this and when you work with this, you're going to have a talk which is going to be engaging. It's not going to confuse people and people are not going to forget it. So how are we going to fight with this? Experiment. So now we need the paper and pen. So I'm going to give you a second and I'm going to move my curtain because I have my sun in my eyes. So everybody, I'm going to put back so you can hear. I can hear you if you're doing something. So how is this experiment going to go? So Sophia will tell you when to put the poll, so don't do it yet. Everybody get a pen and paper and leave it next to you. So it's very important that you're honest in this experiment. I can't see you, you can do whatever you want, but you lying is not going to bring any benefit to anybody, and especially not to this talk. So please be nice and don't cheat and just do exactly what I say, okay? So this is going to be an exercise. I'm going to read you a list of words and you have to try to remember as many as you can. And once I finish, you take the pen and paper and you write down all the words you can remember. So don't write them down while I'm reading them. I know you can do that, okay? But please don't. Just do it afterwards. And then when I say finished and you all kind of remember all the words, Sophia will launch a poll and then you can mark all the words you have on your paper. And let's see what is going to be the distribution of the words you remember. So I'm starting, okay? So everybody don't write down anything just yet and wait for me to finish. So the words are house, tree, chair, mouse, head, flower, sofa, cat, window, light, table, machine, glass, water, picture, sex, building, box, complex systems, door, dog, spring, summer, autumn, winter, milk, car, bird. Okay, go. Take your pen and paper, write down all the words you can remember. So I'm going to give you like a, let's say 15 seconds or something. So you can write down as much as you can. Okay, I think it's enough. So you're good. So now Sophia will launch the poll, but just mark the words you have on a paper, nothing else, okay? So I'm going to give you a bit of time to okay, 3 more seconds and we are closing. 3, 2, 1, go. Okay, do you guys see the results?
Yeah, we do.
You do? Okay. So let's see these results. So 96% of people remember house. So the very first word, almost everybody remembered. And then after that, we have a downward trend. So after that, people are not remembering a bit less. But the word, oh God, this is the first time I don't have everybody remembering the word sex. That's interesting. So 74% of people remember the word sex. This is the first time this happening. All other words which are remembered a lot, 79% complex systems. Then we have spring, summer, autumn, winter, so over 60%. And what else we have over 60%? Window. Okay, maybe because you're looking at the window. I don't know why it's that one. So, and then at the end we have bird, which, yeah, it's kind of going down. Okay, so yeah, more or less what I expected, although we don't really see the downward trend as much. So this was the poll. So what do we see here? We saw that first word, house, was remembered. Let me, all good? Can you hear me? Yeah. So what we saw, the beginning, everybody remembers the beginning. So almost everybody remembered the first word, house. So this is where your attention is the highest. You start from there, and then after that, it goes down. So all the other words are remembered much less than that first one, the first one I said, okay? The other words which are remembered, so we didn't see this, but usually at the very end, maybe because I didn't say and the last word, and then maybe everybody would remember the last word. But usually if you say that, the people also remember the very last one. But in between, the words which had more than 60% of people remembering them were sex, complex systems, and spring, summer, autumn, and fall, autumn and winter. So what first one is somehow controversial, okay? So something which people are thinking it's a bit scandalous, make them blush, okay? So this is one thing people will definitely remember. Complex system, this is something which is common, which is familiar to this group. So everybody in this group are familiar with complex systems, and this is something people will remember. And then finally, we have spring, summer, fall, winter. This is things which are logically going one after another. So you make a logical whole, okay? However, most people, when they make the presentation, they assume that this is your attention curve, okay? Give them a slow introduction, you know? This is the boring thing we all have to do. So let's just kind of slowly go through it until we get to the most important thing. And then once people's attention is higher, I'm going to tell them, and then I'm going to slowly let them go. And no, this is not how it goes. You have to get people's attention at the very beginning. If you don't do it, then they're gone. They're never coming back. I had once a student saying, like, hey, I'm not, you know, they have the project and it's a group and one of them has to do introduction. And he was like, I'm the unfortunate one who has to do the stupid introduction, you know? The introduction is very important. If you mess up introduction, the rest of your talk is nobody's going to listen. You have to catch their attention immediately, tell them immediately why they should follow listening, you know, immediately tell them why what you do is interesting, why it's important, and why they should continue listening to you. Then, once you have their intention, you do the supporting points, and finally, you conclude everything, and you repeat all the important points in your talk. So, how to organize your talk? State the main point first, lay out the supporting points and work out the details, and make a clear conclusion. Repeat the main points. Mantra, tell them what are you going to tell them, and then tell them what you told them. So this is, you know, sometimes you want to make drama and something and no spoilers, that's fine. But in general, this is what's going to work for a good talk. So how are you going to keep attention? Jokes. So jokes always work if you can be funny. Don't force it. Like if you're not very comfortable with making jokes, this is not something you should force, then it's just going to end up much worse, you know? But the more comfortable you become on the scene, the more comfortable you're going to be with making jokes. So make a jokes here or there. It could be cool. It's definitely going to make people listen better. Provocative things, you know, like sex or something, you know, be a bit provocative. Go on the edge where you're going, but don't cross the edge. Once you know, like if you provoke too much, just get closer, just to make people's blood go a little bit, but don't go too much, because then you're just, you know, like somebody provoking them, and then they're just going to talk about that, and that's also not what you need to do. Familiar things, so whatever is familiar to the audience, like here was complex systems I used. People will remember what's familiar, so make sure that you know your audience and you connect what you're talking about with something they're familiar with. And finally, things logically following one another. Sometimes when I do this experiment, I have some people who remembered almost all the words. And when I ask them how they did it, they tell me there is this a technique that when they tell you the words, you make a story out of them. So if I say a house, and then I say a tree, they imagine the house, then they imagine a tree, and then I say chair, there is a chair under the tree, and there is a cat coming here. So they make a story in their head, and this way it makes them remember almost all the words. When you give a talk, don't make people do their own story in the head. You make this story for them. So you connect everything logically so they would remember it. You should not expect them to connect dots for you, okay? So make your story go logically, and this is how people are going to remember it. How not to confuse your audience. So this was the first thing. People are sleepy, how to keep their attention, how not to confuse them. Clear linear structure. So from this goes this, from this goes this, from this goes this, and so on. Don't say this, then this, and then from this it goes here. No, you lose them. End up. Everything you say has to it has to be important for the next thing. Introduce small number of points. 3 is a good number, okay? You don't have to make every single point you have in your paper. Keep small number. So keep it the number people will remember afterwards. Everything else you say is just going to confuse them. They're not going to remember it. Chekhov gun. So this is the rule, let's say, in writing by a famous playwright Chekhov. It's called Chekhov gun. It says remove. So apparently Chekhov said remove everything that has no relevance to the story. If you say in the first chapter that there is a rifle hanging on the wall, in the second or third chapter, it absolutely must go off. If it's not going to be fire, it should not be hanging there. So this, when you look at your talk, remove everything which is not going to be important later. If something is not going to be used later, you should not be talking about it. There's no point. Paint the big picture. So yeah, recently I wanted to learn about Amazon Web Services, and I started watching some videos, just kind of random YouTube videos, and I wanted to get my hair out, you know, like they're kept talking about a lot of details, and I was like, what is this for? You know, like, where do I program? Why do you people not use whole words, you know? And what I realized that most of these videos, and yeah, some were good, thank God, so I managed to learn, but most of them, what they were doing, they were not trying to paint a big picture, okay? If you look, so let's look at this picture here. So it's Las Meninas from yrCSS. Probably heard it. It's on cookie boxes and everywhere if you didn't go to Prado yourself. And if you need to describe this picture to somebody, what are you probably going to do? You're going to look and you can say, okay, there is a little blonde girl in the middle of the picture and she has a fancy dress. It seems like she's a princess or something, or a queen. There are two girls around her. There are two dwarfs on the side and the dog. And then, you know, and then you're going to go in the back and you say, okay, there are some people there, one person through the door, and there is somebody that seems to be a painter, and there is a big painting it seems to be doing. That might be yrCSS. So this is how you're going to do. You first go from the center, what's most important, the girl, and then you go into details. And all these details are important for this to be a magnificent painting. It is. However, if somebody starts giving you like this picture like this, you know, when they give you the first thing, you're going to be, what the hell? What is this? You know, and they say, but it's important, you know, the yrCSS, he put himself in this picture. And, you know, there was the, yes, it is. It's very important detail and it's nice. But this is not the first thing you're going to tell people if you need to explain this picture. So when you're giving your talk, go from the big pictures and then go to the details. So don't explain picture like this, you know, revealing it by, or even worse, like this. You know, there's nothing on the ceiling, okay? And even in the second one, we still don't see the girl, you know? And we need to wait until the end to see the most important thing we are looking in this picture. And that's the girl, okay? So when you're planning your talk, start from the girl. Don't start from the ceiling. Although ceiling might be important, but just talk about that later. How to not confuse audience, another one of this. So don't use precise definition. Precise definitions are for papers. For the talks, it's usually more important to say, what does this mean? Sometimes precise definition is very important. You can use it, and then you can give a precise definition, and then again say, what does this mean? Okay, just explain. Always illustrate with examples. Examples are awesome. People understand everything when you give them an example, and full stop. If you want people to understand, always give them an example. Avoid complicated formulas. Most of talks, you really don't need to write formulas in order for people to understand what you're talking about, okay? However, if it's really, really crucial that formula is there, you have to explain what this formula says. So you can't just put a formula there and say, here we see the formulas, and then we solve this, and then we got this, you know? Why? If people are not going to understand the formulas, you don't put them. But if it's very important for people to understand formula, you have to explain it. So you have to say things like, okay, look at this formula. What we see this is quadratic equation. So being quadratic equation is important because this is going to lead to chaos or what. Or see this term, this is a constant, this is not important. So you don't have to pay attention to this. Pay attention to this. You see this exponent. So we see that things are going exponentially up, or whatever is important in your formula. If you put a formula, you have to explain it. But most of the times you probably don't. Do not use abbreviations please, you know, I really want to know what computer scientists do with all this time they saved from not using the full words. There's no point of it. Like, use the full words, unless it's really acronym everybody uses. But, and you know, sometimes people, you know, the Massimo had to explain us in the first talk that, you know, full term, that's GDPR, because most people just say GDPR, so, and don't know the full term. So okay, you can use that if it's really popular, but most of the times you should avoid abbreviations because people don't know them and they're just going to be lost. And then finally, we go back to the Einstein, what Einstein said: make things as simple as possible, but not simpler than that. So as you are simplifying your talk, make sure you don't cross the part where you're not telling people anything. You still need to transmit information. You still need to tell them what are the results, what are the methods, what, you know, what's going on in your paper. So don't go overboard with simplifying everything. We said audience is forgetful. So how do we fight forgetfulness? It's easy. Repeat, repeat, and repeat. That's it. So the typical audience will remember only 1/3 of what you said. So if you want people to remember something, you have to say it 3 times. So however, how are you going to do it? Just repeat the slides 3 times? No, of course not. But what you introduced in the beginning, then you just give a brief recap after. You know, when, you know, in old times, when we used to watch movies on TV, and then sometimes you go through channels and you see some movie started, but you missed the beginning, you know. But most of the times, although you miss the beginning, you can still follow what's going on and you catch up. And the reason you can do that is because they occasionally repeat the stuff, the most important stuff from the beginning. They don't just say something once and then they never repeat it again, because they want people to catch up with what's going on. And all in your talk, at some point, somebody will just receive a message or they will just lose, you know, their attention. So if you want them to remember and to be able to follow what's going on, the most repeating things, the key things, should be repeated from time to time. So you can repeat it, like, you know, at the beginning, you can have elaborated discussion of what is something new you introduced, and it's very important for people to understand. And then later you can just say, I want to remind you, this was this, this, and this. So very briefly what's going on, or, you know, just kind of rephrase it another way. But make sure, if at the end of the talk people are saying like, hey, they have a question, it's like, what about this? And you say, I said that. It's not their problem because they forgot. It's your problem because that was important thing you didn't emphasize enough times, so they would definitely remember. So repeat, repeat, and repeat. So how to fight? Get their attention at the beginning. This is something we already discussed. Humor and unexpected results. Use, you know, this is always something which people are going to remember. The rule of 3. So this is the rule in writing. For some reason, people think the things which come in threes, either free things or free people or something, are more interesting and more memorable. So we have a lot of journals, or a lot of, like, for example, we have 3 little pigs, 3 musketeers, 3 wise men. So it's very often, like, if you look in all literature, which number is shown the most, it's 3. So keep things in threes. Then ask questions. This question doesn't have to be a question which require an answer. So you can ask just rhetorical questions. But once you ask a question, like, what do you think about this? What's going to be the result? You throw people in an active, you throw them out of the passive mode where they are just listening to you, and you're asking their brain to work. And this makes them think about what you're saying, and then you can continue. If the group is small, you can also actually let people answer and see what they think, and then give them an answer. How not to make slides. So please don't make slides like this. This is a totally ridiculous slide I made. However, if you not exaggerate, let me give you a slide which is not exaggerated. So this is the version of my slide. So this slide I just showed you before. This is how I presented it, but this is how my slide started, okay? And when you see this slide, you probably nobody's going to read this, okay? Nobody's going to read, and you're getting lost in the details, you know? However, if I plot you here, everything I'm saying, the most important things are here. It's easier for you to grasp. So if I say get their attention at the beginning, and then I elaborate, use humor and an unexpected result. The rule number 3, ask questions, you know, you see it reinforces in your memory, you know, this doesn't, you just get lost in what's happening. However, when you do your slides, please do start like this. Start by writing down everything you think it's important, and then just getting rid of everything you can get rid of. So as long as you can get rid of it and it's clear for you what you're supposed to talk there, you know, just get rid of it until you get something which is very short. You see this slide? Like, I've been using this slide for a while. I never understood what is it about. I just kind of randomly downloaded. And the other day I was thinking, maybe this slide is actually trying to show all the ways of plotting things in this program. So this could be what they're trying to do. That's why it's so crowded. But yeah, if you show a slide like this, there's so much going on here that when you look at it, you immediately lose your will to live, basically, okay? You're not going to focus on what's going on there. So don't put a lot of graphs. Keep it very simple. Put one graph, unless you have to compare things. So it's very important that we see them at the same time. One graph per picture is all you need. This is the slide from the presentation they gave about the discovery of the Higgs boson. So you guys remember Higgs boson? So it was I think 8 years ago or something, was finally discovered. And this was like the biggest discovery in physics in the last 50 years. Like, everybody was waiting for this, the last piece of puzzle to standard model Higgs boson. And on the day they made this presentation, they showed this presentation. And if you Google Higgs boson, 10% of the Google results at the time were not about how big this discovery is, by the fact that the font they use is Comic Sans. And this font was not considered serious enough. And some people were defending them, and it was a big conversation about them using Comic Sans. Is it good or is it bad, or what's going on? Some people were defending them. And for the people who defend them, I want to say is if you just made the biggest discovery in last 50 years, you definitely don't want people to talk about the font you used, okay? So try not to mess up. Don't make too much things. My slides hurt. Think about the contrast, okay? So you can barely see the green lines here. Be aware of how things are presented, especially when you project. Data visualization, we can talk hours about data visualization. It's very important. I'm looking forward to see the results of your competition. I'm just going to point 2 things. First, be always honest. This is the famous example about Bush tax cuts expire. So the way it was presented on the Fox News, so it seems like it's such a big difference. But on the right, if you see this honestly presented with a 0, you can see that this is not such a big increase. So don't do this in your presentation. Always be honest with your data. People often think that if they put more colors, things are better. Actually, sometimes less color is going to be better. On the right side, you can see what we need to follow. So just that, everything else is in gray. And this picture talks a much more interesting and more to the point story than a lot of colors. Visualization can be super powerful, so use them. This is the visualization. So this one is from Laura Trump, I think. And she said, try to impeach this, and suggested that Republicans have way more votes than Democrats. And then the Belgian data scientist Karim Dueb said, challenge accepted. And he made this visualization where each thing change for the bubble of how many people live here. And we can see it's way more blue. So this visualization went viral twice, first when he made it and then around the elections the other day. You should definitely click on see what he's doing. He has a lot of very cool visualizations. And let's try summarizing how to make a slide. So one slide should be one idea, approximately 1 minute of your time. Keep stacks to minimum, one figure per slide, nothing which is going to distract people from your main message. So try not to use Comic Sans or something like that. Make sure everything is labeled. So your x-axis, your y-axis, always use the same color for the same thing. If you have multiple graphs about and you have the same thing, it always has to have same color, same symbol, same line, and not same as anything else. So just to avoid confusion and use a good contrast. A picture is worth 1,000 words. It's always better when you illustrate things. So this is the rock, paper, scissors, lizard, Spock game. We know it from Big Bang Theory, so you can illustrate by making it familiar to people, but it's much better if you visually illustrate it so you have kind of a graph. And the best thing is like you start from simpler. So we go from rock, paper, scissors, and then we can easily explain more complicated version when people understood more simple one there. Make it personal. Don't just use default things. Like on the left is the Beamer Warsaw presentation. And sometimes when you go to a conference, which have a lot of math, like 50% of people have this presentation. You know, it's so easy to change. You just need to change 2 words, like the colors and everything. On the right is the poster I used once. So I just downloaded the template and I filled in my research. I came to the conference, I put the poster, I moved away, and in the same line, there were 2 more posters like this, exactly like this. Nobody came to see my poster, okay? Not one person. By not bothering to just change the basic template, you're signaling to people you're not caring. So just make it a little bit personal, a little bit yourself, a little touch, and you know it's going to do wonders for people observing what you do. A bit of comments about virtual talks. So what can you do? And you can see that although this is virtual talk, I still chose to stand because I just kind of feel more dynamic, and I would suggest people do that more often. You can use chat and polls to kind of engage people more in what you're talking, so they're not too passive. And this is the idea I got from Steven Strogatz, who is going to talk later. So he tweeted that he used this in his talk. And basically, he just opened Google Docs, and he let his students write there and communicate with each other. So I did the same thing in my talk, and it worked great. And you can see here, people were even commenting the US election, which were happening at the time, says Michigan in clutch, Nevada is the key. Sure it is. And then people were commenting that this is like, they're like rude people talking in the back of the room. You know, there was somebody even draw a little glider. So if you people know the Game of Life, you will probably recognize it. So a lot of things was going on. And I think it was a very good way to make people interact. And also you see, you know, because I was giving a talk and people were writing there, I could constantly kind of interact with them in a much easier way. So it's not good for conference talks, but if you're giving longer lectures to a student, it works really well. So I really like it. So you can thank Steven Strogatz for this idea I got from him. Stage fright. Don't be surprised, make it work. Even nowadays, I'm sometimes have a stage fright. It's super normal. So don't think like, oh, everybody is so good at giving talks and I only paralyze. Everybody paralyzed. Everybody has some level of stage fright. It's super normal. Make it work for you. You know, just put it into your energy.
one thing why people are obsessed, because they constantly think like, I'm going to mess up and everybody's going to laugh at me. And the thing is, like, you really don't need to be perfect. You know, this talk is not about you. It's about audience. You are there to teach other people something. You're not there to be perfect. And as long as people learn something from you, they're going to appreciate your talk. And if you mess up something, it doesn't matter. You just laugh it off. And it's going to be fine. You know, it's absolutely going to be fine. Self-confidence, enthusiasm. So it's easy to tell, like, yeah, have confidence. How do you get confidence? This is how you get confidence. You know what are you talking about. So you don't have to be perfect. You don't need to know everything. But the more you know about what you're talking, you're more confident you're going to be. So study what you're doing very well. Go in depth, read all the papers, ask all the questions, ask your colleagues to ask you any questions. Make sure you know you have all the answers or most of them, and you are going to be confident. And enthusiasm, how you're enthusiastic about something by liking what you do. So look at your project and think, why do you love doing this project? You know? And if you don't really love what you're doing in your project, think about why would you like? Try to find good things about it. Make a list of the good things about your project and you know, focus on them. Don't make a list about why it's not good. Make a list why it's good and focus on it. And if you really can't make that list, maybe you should change the project or give a talk about something else. But most of the times you will find something good, and then you're going to be able to be enthusiastic about it. And finally, have fun. You know, it's every talk is people sitting in the room, and all the attention is on you. Enjoy it. It's your 5 minutes of fame. So just have fun. How to handle questions. There are a lot of things you can do. Repeat the question, ask them to repeat the questions. And if this doesn't give you enough time to come up with an answer, say, I don't know. This is something people, the bigger the people are, the more famous scientists they are, the more easier for them is say, I don't know. And then you can add something you do know. So don't just say like, I don't know. Say, yeah, okay, that's very good. I actually thought about this, but we were not able to find an answer on that. However, there's this similar thing, and this might suggest that the answer is this. So very important thing is always answer the question, but not the tone. So if you have somebody asking you something and they're a bit aggressive, just raise the tone and just answer what exactly they're asking. And that's it. Don't take things personally, you know? How to nail it. So very briefly, and this is the extra level, is you tell a story. I gave you a lot of hints, which are from how to make a movie, how to make a screenplay, how to write a book. Your giving a presentation is like a little movie or little theater play or little book. Use all these things, tell a story. Your story has two main characters, your research, yourself. Your story is like a little detective novel, you know, you're all Sherlock Holmes. Tell the story, how did you discover something? It's good in do two things. First, if you tell people in that order, it's easier for them to understand it. And second, it's more fun. There is a drama, you know, what's going on. Show your struggle, and perfection is not relatable. So don't be afraid to tell people about the failures you had. We all have them. So conclusions, think about an audience, not yourself. It's not about you, it's about them. So think about them. More detailed conclusions, body language. So we have 3 parts: body language, voice, and content. How do we do body language? Maintain eye contact, move, and gesticulate. Voice, loud, clear, slow, calmly but dynamically. And content, simple linear structure, remove unnecessary details, and the mantra, tell them what you're going to tell them, and tell them what you told them. And finally, I leave here a couple of links. first, what I mentioned about Voice of Margaret Thatcher. So this is the article about her watch training, and you can also have a video of before and after. Then there's a talk, How to Sound Smart in TEDx Talk. It's basically a guy talking for 5 minutes about nothing, and it really demonstrates everything I told you about the body language and the voice, because although there's literally zero content in his talk, he's still engaging. And so take a look. And finally, the shameful advertisement. If you want to hear some talks you definitely want to listen to, December 15, DataBeers Brussels, going virtual, 8 o'clock. And here we have a links on our Twitter and also Eventbrite when you can register. Thank you.